I slid my ID card across the bank counter, voice flat, ready to finalize the cancellation of a debit card I hadn't touched in 15 years. The account was opened the year my parents split up, registered under my legal name, password set to my birthday, my last physical link to songwoping, the father my mom had spent every single day since 2010 painting as a heartless deadbeat who'd vanished without a single dollar of child support. The teller paused mid-screen tap, glancing up at me with a confused, wary expression. Ma'am, I can't process this closure request. The account still holds an active balance, and there's regular incoming activity on the ledger. I leaned forward, expecting a leftover pocket change balance of less than 20 bucks, something trivial I could withdraw and walk away from for good. The number printed on the screen made my fingers lock tight around the edge of the counter. $327.40 sat unused in the account. Beneath the balance, a single line of transaction history burned into my vision. Last deposit received October 15th, 2024, $245 equivalent. My heart skipped a beat. October was last month. 15 years after my dad supposedly cut all contact, money had hit this forgotten account only 30 days prior. Can you pull the full transaction history for the entire lifespan of this account? Every single deposit and withdrawal, no cutoff dates. The teller nodded, inputting a series of commands into her system. The printer beside the counter sputtered to life, churning out page after page of fine print transaction logs for what felt like an eternity. When she finally stacked the thick stack of paper and slid it across to me, her brows were drawn tight with quiet confusion. You've had consistent monthly deposits hit this account every single month for over a decade. I've never seen a record this unbroken. I grabbed the stack and sank into a plastic waiting room chair, flipping pages backward one by one. Every single entry followed the exact identical pattern. On the 15th of every month, a $245 wire transfer landed in the account, sender listed as Songwoping, my father's full legal name. I scrolled further back, page after page, passing 2023, 2022, 2021, all the way to the very first entry dated March 15th, 2010, the exact month my parents finalized their divorce. 180 consecutive monthly deposits, 0 skipped payments over 15 years. Total deposited sum tallied to over $44,000. A single glance at the parallel withdrawal column shattered every lie my mother had drilled into my head since I was 9. Within 48 hours of every monthly deposit clearing, the full $245 was transferred out to a separate bank account with a tail number I recognized instantly. 8873, my mother Chin Mei-jin's personal checking account. The full weight of the manipulation crashed over me in slow, brutal waves. All those years she'd sobbed about scraping by a loan, complaining my father abandoned us without a cent. Every single dollar of mandated child support had landed in my account, only to be immediately drained by her to fund my half-brother Zhao Yang's expensive lifestyle. My phone buzzed sharply in my pocket, caller ID displaying my mother's name. I stared at the bank statement spread across my lap, answering the call without a hint of the shock swirling inside me. Siu, your brother Zhao Yang's college admission banquet is this Saturday. You need to come early to help set up the venue and bring roughly $275 cash to cover partial banquet fees. I stared blankly at the line item on the bank printout showing my father's latest deposit, silent for a beat. Got it. Did you hear me clearly? Don't show up empty-handed. I heard you. I hung up without another word, scrolling down to the final line of the transaction summary printed at the bottom of the last page. Out of the $44,000 my father had sent for my care, only $327 had remained untouched in the account. Every other cent had been stolen by my mother to spend on Zhao Yang. I folded the thick stack of bank printouts and stuffed them into my tote bag, wandering to a nearby bubble tea shop to process the avalanche of memories crashing into my mind one after another. Every financial hardship my mother had blamed on my father's absence now had a clear, bitter explanation. I recalled my 9th grade school trip to Beijing, a mandatory educational tour costing $110. I'd approached my mom hesitantly after class, asking if I could sign up alongside all my classmates. She'd been sitting at the kitchen counter peeling apples for Zhao Yang, tossing a sharp glare my way the second the words left my mouth. You think money grows on trees? If your deadbeat dad bothered to send a single cent of support, I wouldn't be stretched this thin. There's zero chance you're going on that trip. That exact year, my father had deposited nearly $3,000 into my child account, all of which Chin Mei-jin had withdrawn to pay for Zhao Yang's first round of private tutoring lessons. I'd missed the trip entirely, sitting alone at home while every one of my peers toured museums and historic sites across the capital. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from my aunt, Chin Mei-jin's older sister, the family's go-to-messenger tasked with pressuring me into compliance whenever I questioned my mother's narrative. Siu, your mom sent me to check if you'll arrive extra early for Zhao Yang's banquet this weekend. She's over the moon about his university acceptance. You should be thrilled for your brother, too. I gripped the bank statements tighter in my lap, cutting straight to the question I'd never dared ask before. Annie, when my parents divorced, did my father actually fight for legal visitation rights and monthly child support payments? A long, uncomfortable silence stretched across the line, her tone shifting from casual cheer to defensive evasion instantly. What does that matter after all these years? He's a long-haul truck driver. The court would have never awarded him custody anyway. Your mom told me he didn't put up any fight at all. Did you witness the divorce proceedings firsthand? Or are you only repeating whatever my mom told you? I don't have time to dig up old court drama. Siu, don't stir up trouble before Zhao Yang's big celebration this Saturday. She hung up before I could press further, leaving me staring at the wall of the bubble tea shop, connecting every small, painful memory from my childhood to the stolen child support sitting in my bag. Every time I'd worn hand-me-down clothing from Zhao Yang, every time I'd been denied school supplies, summer camps, and birthday gifts, my mother had been sitting on thousands of dollars meant to cover my basic needs. I pulled out my phone and researched local municipal record laws, discovering divorce settlement paperwork was accessible to both involved parties via official archive requests. The next afternoon, I took a half-day off work and headed straight to the District Civil Affairs Bureau, requesting a full copy of my parents' 2010 divorce agreement. A clerk dug through stacks of archived legal documents for 20 minutes before sliding a bound copy across the counter to me. 2 clauses jumped off the page the second I scanned the text, bolded and signed by both my parents and a court mediator. Clause 5. The father, Song Guoping, shall remit a monthly child support payment of $245 to the daughter's dedicated bank account on the 15th of every month until the daughter reaches legal adulthood. Clause 6. The father attains legal monthly visitation rights, 2 scheduled meetings per month with a minor child. My mother's repeated claims that my father had refused to pay support and abandoned all parental rights were complete, deliberate fabrications. I only had one single memory of seeing him after the divorce, when I was 12 years old during a Lunar New Year holiday. I'd been playing outside our apartment complex when a man stood across the street, watching me silently while clutching a wrap shopping bag. My mom had sprinted down the stairs, yanking me roughly back inside the building, screaming threats to call the police if he ever showed his face again. Later, she told me the stranger was a random dangerous stalker, and I believed the lie for 12 full years. By the time I turned 17, I'd grown so bitter at the non-existent father my mom described that I'd lost all curiosity about reaching out to him, writing him off as a cruel, absent parent without a single piece of contradictory evidence to prove otherwise. That blind resentment had been manufactured entirely through 15 years of constant emotional manipulation. I left the Civil Affairs Bureau clutching the certified divorce agreement, determined to track down Song Guoping and confront him about the 15 years of stolen support payments. I started with the residential address listed on the old household registry file, taking a 40-minute city bus ride to the southern downtown residential complex where he'd supposedly lived after the split. I knocked on the front door of the listed apartment, only to be greeted by a young woman holding a toddler who shook her head immediately when I said Song Guoping's name. We moved into this unit 3 years ago. I've never heard anyone mention that man. I canvassed every neighboring household and the convenience store downstairs, but no residents could provide any updated contact information or new address for my father. The trail went cold instantly, leaving me with nothing but a full name, an outdated residential address, and the bank transfer information printed on my transaction logs. I returned to my shared rental apartment that evening, my roommate Lou Tion noticing my hollow, exhausted expression the second I walked through the door. She paused mid-noodle cooking, sliding a full bowl of hot food across the dining table toward me without pushing for immediate answers. I ate slowly, drifting back to faint positive childhood memories of my father before the divorce, how he'd always fried eggs for my breakfast each morning, carefully flipping the pan so the burnt side rested on the plate, letting me eat the fully cooked, golden yolk side every single time. Chun Meijin had never once cooked eggs for me growing up, prioritizing Zhao Yang's favorite milk and breakfast pastries instead. The next workday, I formulated a new plan to locate him. The bank transaction logs listed the exact branch of the rural commercial bank where every monthly deposit had originated, a location on the northern side of the city. I submitted another half-day leave request and traveled to the branch, laying my ID card and certified divorce agreement on the customer service counter to explain the situation to the head bank supervisor. The supervisor reviewed the legal paperwork thoroughly before speaking to me, bound by privacy policy to withhold his current phone number and residential address, but he offered one critical detail I'd never anticipated. The account holder Song Guoping visits this physical branch in person on the 15th of every single month to complete the deposit transaction. He doesn't use mobile banking applications at all, so he shows up in person without fail. My chest tightened with a mix of shock and grief. For 180 months, my father had taken time off from his grueling long-haul trucking schedule to travel to the bank branch, standing in line each month to hand over cash deposits meant for my care. Will he come again on the upcoming 15th? Based on 15 years of consistent transaction records, he will be here, without exception, in 11 days. I thanked the supervisor and left the bank, already mentally marking the date on my calendar. I would take the entire day off work to wait for him, determined to ask him every question that had piled up over 15 years of lies and separation. Over the next 11 days, I split my spare time between organizing my growing folder of evidence and mentally preparing for the long-overdue meeting with my father. I categorized all physical proof into separate labeled sections inside a thick manila envelope, the full 15-year bank transaction history, certified divorce settlement agreement, and handwritten notes documenting every instance my mother lied about missing child support payments and fabricated hardship stories to fund Zhao Yang's expensive lifestyle. I also cross-referenced Zhao Yang's known expenses against the total stolen child support sum to calculate the full scale of the exploitation. His private middle school tutoring alone cost $350 monthly for 3 full years. His high school art training program carried a $5,000 annual price tag for 2 years. The custom designer suit he planned to wear for his college banquet cost $400 upfront. All of these expenses were covered with the child support money legally designated for my food, housing, education, and personal needs. While sorting my paperwork late one night, my phone lit up with a long text message from my half-brother Zhao Yang, sent unprompted out of the blue. Hey sis, Mom mentioned you're upset about the banquet this weekend. I had no idea there was any issue with financial stuff over the years. I'm really sorry if anything's unfair to you. I'll pay you back for any money Mom misused once I start working full-time after graduation. I read the message once, then closed the chat without replying. Zhao Yang was not the villain of the story. He was merely another casualty of my mother's self-serving manipulation, kept completely unaware of the stolen funds that had built his privileged upbringing. Lu Tian noticed me organizing stacks of printed bank records and legal documents late that evening, offering to use the office printer at her workplace to make full duplicate copies of every piece of evidence, so I would have a complete backup set to bring to the college banquet confrontation with my mother. I sent over digital scans of all my paperwork, and she returned an hour later with a second sealed manila folder holding crisp, full duplicates of every document I collected. Want me to come to the banquet with you as backup? She asked gently, knowing how tense the confrontation would turn once I laid out the full truth in front of every family member and guest. I shook my head, declining her offer. This was a reckoning I needed to face alone, without anyone else's interference to dilute the weight of my mother's 15 years of deception. That night, I stayed awake until 3 a.m., scrolling through a photo my father had written a note about in his monthly ledger entry dated January 15th, 2019, a line stating he'd sent money to buy me a birthday cake for my 20th birthday. I recalled that exact day vividly. My mother had splurged $800 on brand new athletic sneakers for Zhao Yang to reward his midterm exam scores, while my birthday passed entirely unacknowledged by anyone in the household. I'd ordered a cheap $9 mini cake from a local convenience store and blown out the candles alone in my tiny rental room that night, completely unaware my father had set aside dedicated funds for a proper birthday celebration for me that my mother had stolen outright. I tucked both manila folders of evidence into my tote bag before bed, setting an alarm for early morning on the 15th to meet my father at the bank branch first, before the Saturday banquet showdown with my mother and the entire extended family. 2 critical confrontations waited ahead of me, each one guaranteed to unravel the 15-year web of lies Chen Meizhen had built to exploit both me and my father for her son's benefit. November 15th arrived fast, and I took the full day off work without telling Chen Meizhen a single word of my plans. I hit the street before 8 a.m. Settling into a booth at the breakfast shop directly across from the rural commercial bank branch, the manila folder holding all my legal and bank evidence tucked tight inside my canvas bag. I ordered a bowl of wontons, finished it, then ordered a second, my eyes locked unblinking on the bank's glass front doors. Every passing pedestrian made my pulse spike. I couldn't shake the clash between the father my mom had painted as a cold, absent deadbeat and the man who dragged himself to this exact branch once a month, without fail, for 15 years. At 9:10, I spotted him. He was shorter than the tall, broad-shouldered man I remembered from childhood. His spine curved forward like he carried a permanent weight across his shoulders. A faded army green canvas jacket hung loose on his frame, and a noticeable limp dragged at his right leg as he crossed the sidewalk. His hands were calloused, knuckles thick and stained dark with grease, markers of a lifetime hauling heavy freight as a long-distance truck driver. He clutched a frayed cloth money bag clutched his chest, shuffling slow through the bank's entrance. I shot out of the breakfast shop's booth before I could overthink it, skidding to a halt right outside the glass door, watching him through the clear panel as he leaned over the counter to fill out a deposit slip. His handwriting was messy, slanted, like he'd never had much time for school growing up. When he finished filling out the paperwork, he waited quietly while the teller processed his transfer, no phone to distract him, no rushing to leave. 10 minutes later, he folded his bank card back into the cloth bag, zipped the inner pocket shut, and turned to walk out. Our eyes crashed into each other the second he pushed the door open. He glanced at me once, flicked his gaze away, then snapped his head back for a second, sharp double take. Recognition flickered across his lined face, but he stepped sideways, shoulders hunched, ready to slip past me without a word, like he thought I'd walk right on by, just like every year prior, when Chen Meizhen had blocked all his attempts to reach me. I spoke before he could step away. Dad. His feet froze solid on the concrete pavement. His back stayed turned to me for a long stretch, shoulders shaking subtle, quiet tremors I could see even from 2 feet away. It took nearly 30 seconds for him to twist around to face me, his eyes bloodshot, hands twisting nervously at the hem of his worn jacket, unsure if he could get close enough to talk without triggering a scene. His voice came out rough, cracked, like he hadn't said my name out loud in years. It's you? Is it really you? I nodded, no extra small talk to soften the blow I'd come here to deliver. I came to find you, because I closed that old kid's bank account you opened for me when we split up. I only found out last month you've sent 1,800 yuan every single month, non-stop, for 15 years. His brows crumpled in raw confusion, head tilting to the side. I sent the money every month like the divorce papers said. Your mom told me you got every cent, every time. Said you used it for school fees, clothes, whatever you needed. The line landed like a brick to my chest, and I stared him down straight, no room for gentle half-truths. I never touched a single yuan of that money. She transferred every deposit straight into her own account within 2 days of it hitting mine. All 400,000 yuan you sent went straight to Zhao Yang's tutoring, his art school fees, his fancy new clothes and banquet suit. I never saw a penny. The color drained completely from his face. He staggered back half a step, one hand flying out to grip the concrete pillar beside the bank door to hold himself upright, knees buckling hard. He didn't make a single loud sob, just slowly sank down onto the cold pavement, forehead pressed tight against his kneecaps, his whole frame trembling with a grief he'd carried alone for over a decade. I knelt down beside him, quiet, no rush to push him to talk through the shock crashing over him. After a minute passed, he lifted his head, eyes glistening, and gestured weakly toward the Northern Village neighborhood where he rented a room. Come on, I'll show you where I've been staying all these years. We took a short bus ride to the cramped urban village, and he led me down a narrow alley lined with stacked shacks and shared water taps. His living space was a single partitioned room, barely 15 square meters, nothing more than a thin metal bed frame, a flimsy plastic folding table, a mini dorm-sized fridge, and a single induction hot plate for cooking. A frayed rope strung across one wall held 2 faded long-sleeve shirts, his only spare outerwear. He scrambled around the second I stepped through the door, rushing to grab a chipped ceramic mug to pour me lukewarm tap water, pushing the only comfortable spot, the bed, toward me to sit. I scanned the room's bare walls first, and my gaze locked onto the tiny refrigerator perched in the corner. Taped all over its front surface were crumpled photos, held fast with cheap clear packing tape. Front and center was my junior high graduation portrait, edges curled yellow from years of humidity and handling. Scattered around it were blurry phone screenshots, obviously snapped from another person's cell phone screen, my college graduation post, a birthday sunset I posted to my social media, a candid shot of me eating takeout at my desk last winter. "I don't have your WeChat. Never got your number," he mumbled, staring at the photos like he was scared I'd tear them down. "I tracked down your mom's older sister, begged her to send me screenshots whenever you posted something online. She didn't want at first, but I bring her produce from the trucking warehouse every time I made a delivery run out west." I didn't answer, throat tight enough to block speech, my eyes drifting to the beat-up craft paper notebook sitting open on the folding table between us. Before he could lunge forward to hide it, I reached out and lifted the cover, and the second page's messy handwriting knocked the air straight out of my lungs. Every single page matched the exact date of his monthly bank deposit, one entry per month for 15 years, scrawled in his unpolished handwriting, little personal notes he'd written just for me, never knowing I'd never read a single line for over a decade. March 15th, 2010, 1,800 yuan. CU's staying with her mom from now on. I'll send money every month, hope it keeps her from going without anything she needs. June 15th, 2012, 1,800 yuan. CU's graduating primary school. Wish I could buy her a nice new dress for the ceremony. September 15th, 2015, 1,800 yuan. High school tuition's due soon. If this isn't enough, I'll pick up extra night hall runs next month to send more. January 15th, 2019, 1,800 yuan. CU turns 20 this month. Hope she gets a birthday cake, something sweet to look forward to. I remembered every single one of those milestones crystal clear. For primary school graduation, I'd worn Zhao Yang's faded hand-me-down t-shirt with a hole in the sleeve. High school tuition season. Chen Meijin had forced me to fill out poverty aid paperwork while she dropped thousands on Zhao Yang's art training. My 20th birthday, she splurged an entire month's worth of Guoping's child support on a pair of brand-name sneakers for my half-brother, leaving me to order a 9 yuan cheap mini cake alone in my rental room after work. I flipped to the most recent entry, dated October 15th, 2024, the same month he'd made the last deposit I'd found on the bank log. CU's 24 now. I just hope she's living steady, doesn't have to stress about money the way I did growing up. If she's happy, that's all I ask for. The notebook slipped out of my grasp, landing flat on the table. Guoping bent down fast to pick it up, folding the cover closed like he was embarrassed I'd seen all his quiet, unspoken hopes for me over the years. "Just silly little ramblings," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Nothing worth reading." I glanced over at his tiny fridge, where a neat stack of raw eggs sat lined up on the top shelf, and the induction stove beside it with nothing but a bag of dried noodles and half a jar of chili sauce for meals. I did quick mental math in my head. He told me his monthly trucking income hovered between 4,000 and 5,000 yuan, and he sent exactly 1,800 of that to me every single month. All he kept for rent, food, medical bills, and daily necessities was barely more than 2,000 yuan a month, trapped in a tiny 15-square-meter shack, surviving on noodles while funding Zhao Yang's privileged life through my mother's theft. I sat back on the thin mattress of his metal bed, folding my hands in my lap, and asked the question that had lingered in my head since I was 12 years old. "You came to see me that Lunar New Year when I was 12, right?" Standing across the road holding a shopping bag full of clothes. Guoping's shoulders sagged instantly, a deep, exhausted sigh rumbling in his chest. I tried every single month for the first 2 years after the divorce, just like the court papers said I had the right to. Every time I showed up at your apartment complex gate, your mom would scream and threaten to dial the police, yell loud enough for every neighbor to stare. I didn't want to drag you into ugly fights, so I stopped knocking on the door after a while. I'd just hang around the street across from the building, hoping I'd catch a glimpse of you playing outside. The bag you had that day, what was inside it? New winter coat, a pair of warm boots, a box of chocolate candy you loved when you were little. I saved up extra, hauling overtime shifts for weeks to buy it all. Your mom ran down and ripped the bag out of my hands, threw every piece of clothing straight into the community trash bin before I could stop her. Told me if I ever showed my face near you again, she'd press harassment charges and get the court to strip me of all visitation rights permanently. My chest ached sharp, remembering how Chen Meijin had lied to me for years, claiming that stranger across the street had been a random dangerous stalker, that my father had zero interest in ever seeing me again. I'd carried that false fear of him for over a decade, all built on her deliberate lies to cut off every possible connection between us. I nodded toward his limp right leg, the awkward way he shifted weight every time he stood or walked. "What happened to your leg?" 2 years back, hauling construction steel beams for a warehouse delivery, the forklift misaligned the pallet, dropped a full stack right on my calf. Doctor said it'd never fully heal straight, left me with a permanent limp. I never took more than 3 days off work to recover, though couldn't skip the monthly trip to the bank for your deposit, couldn't risk falling behind on the child support payments the court ordered. He spoke it like it was nothing, like crippling work injury was a minor inconvenience compared to failing to send my monthly funds. I thought back to all the times Chen Meijin had cried about how broke she was, how she couldn't afford school trips or new clothes for me, all while Guoping pushed through a permanent leg injury to keep the 1,800 yuan deposits rolling and without a single delay. I pulled the full stack of bank transaction printouts out of my bag, spreading them across the folding table for him to read. He leaned forward slowly, squinting at the tiny printed numbers, tracing every monthly deposit line with a rough, calloused finger, his breath growing shallow as he tracked the consistent withdrawal transfers to Chen Meijin's account tail number 8,873 every single cycle. All this time, I thought the money was going straight to you, he whispered, voice hollow. I never imagined she'd drain every single you on the second it cleared, leave you with nothing but a couple hundred left untouched in the account after 15 years. I asked her multiple times over the years if you'd sent any support money. I told him flatly, recalling every manipulative conversation from my teen years. Every single time, she swore you'd cut all financial ties, abandoned us completely, that she was scraping by alone with zero help from your side. She built the whole family's narrative around that lie. All the aunts, uncles, Zhao Yang, every relative believes she raised me single-handedly with no child support whatsoever. Guoping stared down at the ledger notebook beside the bank statements, jaw tight. I tried calling her every few months for the first 5 years after the split, just to check if you had everything you needed. She'd hang up the second she heard my voice, blocked every new phone number I got a hold of to reach her. I had no way to verify if the money was reaching you, no way to ask how you were doing besides begging her sister for blurry phone screenshots of your social media posts. We sat in silence for a long stretch after that, the only sound the hum of the tiny fridge and distant chatter from the alley outside his shack. Guoping finally stood up, moving over to the induction stove to crack a handful of eggs into a pan, the same gentle, clumsy frying motion I remembered from childhood. He always laid the burnt side flat against the plate, letting the fully cooked golden half sit facing up for me to eat, a tiny habit he'd never forgotten after all these years apart. I've bit into the soft egg yolk, the familiar flavor cracking open every suppressed childhood memory I'd buried under 15 years of my mother's lies. When I finished eating, I pushed the sack of bank logs and divorce agreement across the table toward him so he could make copies for himself, legal proof of Chen Meijian's 15-year financial fraud. This Saturday's Zhao Yang's college admission banquet .12 tables full of every relative, her friends, all of Zhao Yang's classmates and their parents. She's planned the whole event around the narrative that she single-handedly raised both of us, scraped together every cent to pay for his elite education with zero outside help. Guoping's brows pulled tight with worry, hands twisting again at his jacket hem. You're not planning to stir up trouble in front of everyone, are you? I don't want you fighting with your whole family, getting labeled the ungrateful daughter for airing all this out publicly. I'm not going to scream or throw a scene, I clarified, tapping the duplicate manila folder tucked inside my bag that Lu Tian had printed for me. I'm just going to lay every piece of evidence out on the main banquet table. Let every single person there read the truth for themselves. All the bank records, the divorce contract, your monthly ledger notes. No yelling, no emotional outbursts, just cold, written proof of every lie she's fed the entire family for 15 years. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the rough budget I'd mapped out the night before, calculating the total stolen child support some once more. 400,000 yuan drained exclusively to fund Zhao Yang's tutoring, art school, luxury clothing, and the upcoming 12-table banquet, each table priced exactly 1,800 yuan, the identical monthly amount Guoping had sent me for 15 years, a sick, ironic coincidence Chen Meijian hadn't even bothered to hide. After the banquet, I've got another plan, I told him, watching his cautious expression soften slightly. I found a one-bedroom apartment close to my office last week, rents 1,500 a month. I'm covering all the rent and utilities out of my salary, and I want you to move in with me permanently. You've spent 15 years sending me 1,800 yuan every month, sacrificing your own comfort to try and take care of me. Let me take care of you for once. Guoping immediately shook his head, waving his hands like he couldn't accept such a generous offer. No way. That's too much money for you to spend on me. I'm fine right here in this small room. I don't need anything fancy. You sent me 1,800 every month for 180 months straight. I cut him off, firm but calm. Even if I pay your 1,500 rent every month for the next 15 years, it'll barely make up for all the money she stole from me, and all the sacrifices you made alone without knowing I never saw a cent of it. This isn't charity. It's me paying back the care you tried to give me all those years. He stared at me, eyes glistening again, no more protests left on his tongue. He nodded once, slow and quiet, a small, fragile smile tugging at the corner of his mouth for the first time all day. We spent the rest of the afternoon sorting through his few belongings, packing the photos taped to his fridge carefully into a plastic bag so I could rotate them on the walls of the new apartment we'd share. Before I left his cramped rental room to head back to my own shared apartment, I folded the full set of evidence back into my manila folder, double-checking every document was intact for the Saturday banquet showdown. Chen Meijian had spent 15 years building a perfect, sympathetic victim persona in front of the entire family, weaponizing every relative's sympathy to hide her theft and manipulation. This Saturday, every single one of her carefully constructed lies would crumble in front of everyone she'd spent years fooling, backed by irrefutable, written proof that no amount of emotional manipulation could brush aside.